Well, this one takes a prize. Elnark no Zaihou is the hardest Famicom game. It's not even a competition. Okay, these days it doesn't seem too bad since you can finish it in about an hour if you follow a guide. But that guide wasn't around in 1987. Or rather, it wasn't around in a useful form. You see, it took 13 years for this game to be beaten. When a player discovered how to do it, he was actually invited to go on television to show the ending. I'm going to give you a spoiler here. I don't manage to beat Elnark no Zaihou. In fact, the only reason I might ever play this game again is to try to enter an exclusive club of the few people who have completed it. You see, along with being virtually impossible, Elnark no Zaihou is a terrible game. This is our second game by Toachiki. Their first game was Sherlock Holmes, another contender for worst Famicom game, so you can see that they're dedicated to high quality. The title means Elnark's treasure, and that's the goal of the game. You're going through a South American country looking for your friend who is hunting for this lost treasure. The game itself is a top-down action game with a bit of puzzle solving and exploration. As you walk around, the A button fires your weapon. The B button flashes up the magic stone that's used to interact with a handful of objects. You can also press select and then A and B to choose your weapon, but there's never any reason to not use the last weapon you picked up. Now, most people can't beat the first stage. I at least got past this, so I'll be able to walk you through that. You start out by exploring this riverbank, and you just have to keep walking up and walking up. Eventually it loops back to the beginning. The manual tells you to not worry about that. It may seem like it's looping infinitely, but you're making progress. The manual is a liar. What you actually have to do is go to this dead end and smash your face into this cliff wall for a few seconds. Then you'll pass through and just stay on the right-hand side of the river until the boss appears. Shoot them a few times, and then you can get into the second stage, which is a dungeon. Along your long path, you'll find a couple different pickups. The vials are health potions. Be careful about collecting these because they do not respawn. There's a finite amount of health in Elnark no Zaihou, and it is very possible to break your game by collecting all of it. You'll also see these icons as you walk around. They affect your personality meter. Your personality can range between light and dark. The only thing this affects is if a few doors open for you. Some of those require dark, some of them require light. You can also get some light and dark by picking up certain characters you see on the way. The fairies are light. In the dungeon is where you'll first encounter items that you can examine. You'll get some not especially helpful hints if you look at those. You'll also find a weapon upgrade to a gun. There's one weapon upgrade per stage. The dungeon is absolutely huge. It's also mostly empty. Around 97% of it is just nothing. There's also lots of long dead ends that go nowhere. The dungeon is where the combat starts ramping up. Enemies will appear at the very edge of the screen, and the only thing that's affected by walls is your movement. So enemies just move in a random walk that takes them through walls, and your shots also go through walls. The thing about enemies appearing at the edges of the screen, though, is that a lot of the enemies in the dungeon throw fireballs pretty quickly, so they'll appear and just start throwing them, and since you can't take out the enemy in one hit, you'll often have to eat several hits before they're defeated. This is especially true if you're in a narrow space. When you get a game over, you can continue, but only by using the password that you're given when you get a game over. So you have to type in the whole password every time, and if you make an error, the game erases the whole thing and makes you type it again. I have one useful tip for Elnark. When you change stages, kill yourself. Continuing refills your life bar, and since potions are limited, having a password right when you get to the stage is useful while you figure out what you're doing. I didn't get past the second boss, so I can't show you why it took 13 years to beat Elnark no Zaihou, but I can tell you. You see, to open the door to the final dungeon, requires that your personality meter be completely dark. To open the door to the final boss requires that your personality meter be completely light. There aren't enough pickups in the final dungeon to take your meter from being completely dark to completely light. So for over a decade, it was thought that the game was impossible to complete. The technique that was found to allow people to beat the game seems to use a bug to underflow the personality meter. That flips it from completely dark to completely light. Even without that bug, Elnark no Zaihou would rank among the worst Famicom games. The action feels more like a tech demo than a finished game, and you effectively have to use a guide for the puzzles and mazes. That bug, however, elevates Elnark no Zaihou to be one of the most infamous games in the Famicom library.